Abagnale am known as the world's greatest imposter, and no wonder. In the course of my nefarious career, I've palmed myself off as a doctor, lawyer, college instructor, stockbroker, and airline pilot. To become an airline pilot, I merely bought a plastic ID card for $5, affixed an airline logo from a model plane hobby kit, and in no time at all was co-pilot for a major airline. As a bogus lawyer, I actually worked on a state attorney general's staff. For 6 years, I also cashed over $2,500,000 in bad checks in 26 countries. Ultimately, I was sentenced to 72 years in prison. I served 1 year in France, 1 year in Sweden. I then served 4 years in a federal prison in this country. Paroled, I now devote my life to the prevention and detection of...
It's estimated that I flew about 1 million miles, boarded more than 250 aircraft in more than 26 countries, and that's probably true because I did a lot of traveling.
You know, it's been a while since I've done this. Which one's the jumpsuit again?
The French prisons were a horrible place. There was a cell where you only had a blanket on the floor. There was a hole in the floor to go to the bathroom. There was no plumbing. There was no electricity. And consequently, when you leave that prison system, it is a true deterrent. What I did 40 years ago is 4,000 times easier to do today than when I did it. I always was an opportunist. That's why I got away with the things I got away with. A lot of kids ran away in the 1960s, but they got into Haight-Ashbury and the hippie scene, the drug scene. Instead, I thought, how do I survive now? I'm 16 years old. I look a little older. I'll use that as an asset. And so first thing I did was to lie about my age, just to get people to treat me as an adult. No matter what it brought me, no matter what wealth or fame it brought me, I would never want to have to experience it again. I cried myself to sleep till I was 19 years old. I spent every birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day in a hotel room by myself. The only people I associated with were people who believed me to be their peer, 10 years older than I actually was. And then, of course, it took the FBI about 3 years to realize that I was a kid and not an adult. And when they identified who I was, I think it was very hard for my mother to comprehend that I was doing all these things because she only knew me as this 16-year-old boy in high school. I actually was on Johnny Carson 9 times back in the late 1970s, and after the first night I was on, he got hundreds of calls about how do I buy this book about this guy, and there was no book. And so Johnny Carson contacted me and said, you need to write a book about your life. I said, no, I'm just in my late 20s. He said, no, now's the time to write it. And we wrote Catch Me If You Can. Steven Spielberg understood that. He knew how this all started, and so on the night that they finished filming the movie and it was completely edited, he made a disc, and the first person ever to actually see the entire film besides Spielberg himself was Johnny Carson. He sent it to his home and wrote on the disc, this would not have been possible without you. I could sit here and tell you that I was a born-again Christian. I'm not. I could tell you that prison rehabilitated me, but it didn't. I could tell you and take a cheap shot that I was a kid and I made some mistakes and grew up, but the truth is, God gave me a wife, she gave me 3 beautiful children, she gave me a family, and she changed my life.